Millions of workers in Bangladesh's textile industry returned to work. All factories reopened after an 8-day shutdown following the collapse of the building, which, as you will be well aware, left more than 400 people dead. Of course, questions about safety standards continue and are rising. Join me at the library and you'll see some of the really significant issues that are around at the moment. The first, of course, the building itself. The local mayor has been suspended. He was in charge in approving the construction of the building. And when those cracks appeared, he failed to close the factory. So the mayor suspended. But of course, that doesn't negate the fact that the owner of the building, the 9-story Rana Plaza, has been arrested. Assets have been seized. And protesters are now calling for him to receive the death penalty. In all, 8 people are now being held for alleged negligence, and they include the factory owners, the engineers who all ignored warnings, onwards and so on it goes, and the recovery operation continues. Bangladesh's Prime Minister says the recent explosion in the town of West Texas is an example of how industrial actions can happen anywhere in the world. She was speaking exclusively to Christiane Namanpour.
There are only 18 inspectors for more than 100,000 factories and these kinds of buildings. How on earth can you get a grip on this with that crazy ratio?
You know, anywhere in the world, any accident can take place. You cannot, predict anything. Even in many developed countries, we can see recently there was a, accident in a fertilizer industry in Texas. So accident may take place.
But when you say we couldn't predict it, of course you could. This factory was shown on television the very night before. There were huge cracks in the walls. The owner said, oh no, this is just about the plaster. And the very next day, the factory collapsed. So it could have been predicted. Who does the blame fall on then?
Listen, the industrial police, time and again, they told them that the labor should not work in this condition, but that moment the accident took place.
All right.
It is not true that the government hasn't taken any steps. We have taken steps and we try to prevent them.
You can see the full interview with Sheikh Hasina on Amanpour in less than half an hour from now, 8 p.m. in London, 9 Central Europe. That's coming up in just about 25 minutes. There's one simple reason why so many companies are attracted to Bangladesh: to produce clothes, something like this, the sort of $5 T-shirt, $7 shirt, and the $10 pair of jeans. Just look at the way the comparison of making costs in the clothes come. This survey came 13 years ago. The organisation is the Institute for Global Labour and Human Rights. Now, they asked a factory in Chicago and a factory in Bangladesh, how much would it cost to make a denim shirt? The factory in Chicago said $13 to $22. The factory in Bangladesh, $3.72, a third of the price. And if you look at this, you see the difference. Materials are $5, materials $3.30. Of course, a much larger percentage and pro rata. But then look at costs of labour. $7.47, which makes up 57%. Labour over here, 22 cents. But it's not just the numerical amount, it's the actual amount, 6% versus 57%. So in this scenario, how can the US compete against those sort of prices? And more importantly, what sort of message is coming from the industry down? James Fallon is the editor at Women's Wear Daily, joins me now from New York. James, the truth is there can't be a competition between, obviously, domestic garment manufacture and developing world manufacture. So how does the industry bridge that very large gap?
Well, you're seeing the industry take some actions following the Tazreen Fashions fire in November, where they try to institute tougher standards in terms of fire safety inspection and so forth. I mean, Bangladesh seems to be the case at the moment with all these, with most of the disasters. I mean, China seems relatively safe. I use the word relatively, and other low-cost nations seem to be avoiding these problems. But the industry can only do so much when you're dealing with government inspectors of buildings and so forth. the only solution would be they had a person on site of every plant they use, which is almost impossible.
Right, that's not going to happen. But let's just talk about what the industry can do. Is it fair and reasonable that the industry pays more for its clothes from these countries and, yes, passes it on to you and me, or reduces its margins, or somehow ensures a better standard for the manufacturers?
I think the industry is trying to do that within the best realm it can, but at the end of the day, is the consumer willing to pay $3, $4, or $5 more for the T-shirt, the regular shirt, or the pair of jeans? It comes down to that. And if the Walmarts of the world or the Mangos or whatever aren't offering that product, someone else will. So I think the industry has a moral responsibility to make sure that the factories they're using and the workforce they're using, the labor standards are met. There's no sweatshop abuses. There's no worker abuses. The factories are safe. And I think you're beginning to see them take action to try to ensure that as best they can. But they can ensure that and ensure that the contractor they're working with doesn't then subcontract it 3 factories down the line.
Let's grab this firmly where it belongs, James. At the end of the day, those prices...
By the throat.
Well, absolutely, by the throat. And by the throat, I mean the consumer, me, you. We have to accept that we have to pay more.
Absolutely. But I mean, the surveys show, I think we ran a story in Women's Wear Daily a few months ago where they surveyed American consumers asking would they be willing to pay more for made in the USA product. And the answer was yes. Well, of course, in a survey, they're going to say yes. In reality, probably not. And you're dealing with a lot of economic uncertainty, if not, high unemployment in Europe, unemployment in the U.S. So where is this balance? And I think that the industry can take lower margin, but Walmart's margins on a lot of its products aren't that high anyway. But they have to make sure that the factories they're using and the suppliers they're using are safe. And I think that they're trying to do that. But it's after a certain while, it becomes a very gray area.
James, thank you for putting it into perspective for us. Good to see you, as always, from New York. And this is something that we will continue to watch very closely as long as these clothes are being made and we're paying these prices. I'll be back after the break.